Welcome to the fifth in our series of option videos. I'd now like to talk about exercise and assignment of options. When someone owns an option and they don't sell their option before the option expires, if the option is, quote, in the money, the option will automatically exercise. It will auto-exercise. Now, in the money for a call implies that, and now we're talking about multiple points in time, but for a call in the money means that the stock price exceeds the strike price of the call. In that case, the call will have some amount of intrinsic value. And so whenever we have intrinsic value, the call is said to be in the money. Now, the same is true for a put. Whenever a put has some intrinsic value, the put is said to be in the money. So for a put option, it's going to be X greater than S. So a call is in the money if the stock price exceeds the price that you have the right to pay. Makes sense. You have the right to pay a lower price than the current stock price. So you could buy at the low price X by exercising your option and turn around and sell it immediately at the market price S. You could buy at X and immediately turn around and sell at S and make a profit. With a put option, you have the right to sell at X. And so whenever your strike price exceeds the current stock price, that means you could buy the stock at the lower S and then exercise your put option to sell at X. Buy at low S, sell at high X, and thereby profit. Okay, so that's the meaning of in the money. But options are very often in the money, and one will choose to not exercise them. Okay, so as a matter of fact, it's usually a bad idea to exercise an option that's in the money before the expiration of the option. It's usually a bad idea. Again, I'm talking about American options. Okay, so but the idea of exercise means that if you own a call, and you held it through expiration, it's going to automatically exercise. Now, you could exercise your option intentionally before expiration. You could do that, enter an order with your broker to exercise your options. I'm suggesting that is, generally speaking, unwise. We'll talk about why later. So whenever S is greater than X, whenever stock price exceeds the strike price of the call is in the money, and the call has intrinsic value. For a put option, whenever the exercise price of the option exceeds the stock price, we say the put is in the money, and the put would then have some intrinsic value. If you have a call or a put position that you own a call or you own a put, and the moment of expiration passes, if your option is in the money, it is going to auto-exercise. If you own a call, you are going to be buying 100 shares of stock at the strike price. If, on the other hand, you own a put, then you're going to be selling 100 shares of stock at the strike price X. Now, you might say, what if I don't own any stock and I bought a put and now it auto-exercises? Well, you're going to end up with what we call a short position in the stock. You're going to own minus 100 shares. You will effectively be selling to open your position, and you will likely choose to close that position by buying to close at some later point in time. So, now what's assignment? Assignment, well, this gets us to consider where these options come from. Well, you may know that when traders short sell stock, that means they're selling before they buy. Most people, when they trade, they buy and then at some point in time later sell, and they're hoping that their buy price is lower than their sell price, and the difference would be their profit on a per share basis. Total profit would be that per share profit times the number of shares that they traded. Well, if you take a short position in stock, your broker borrows shares on your behalf after you indicate to your broker you want to sell shares, and then you take those borrowed shares and you sell them. Well, you don't own shares. You sold someone shares who you borrowed. So what you now owe is shares. You owe shares to someone. Now, the good news is your relationship is not directly with the person whose shares you borrowed. Your obligations are run through your broker and the exchange and the clearing firm and all of that, but that's not the topic for the current discussion. But when you sell stock, shares are borrowed, you then sell them, so you now own stock. You sell to open your position, and at some time in the future, you will likely buy to close. Now, that's opposite of what most people do. Most people buy to open and later sometimes sell to close, hoping they sell at a higher price than they bought at. But in this case, short selling with stock involves selling to open and then buying to close. So you end up, if you sell to open and buy to close, then you'll have nothing left, assuming the size of the trades on the buy and sell side were the same. Now, with options, it's different. So where do calls come from and where do puts come from? No borrowing is required. It's very important that you understand that. When we sell to open calls and when we sell to open puts, when we sell to open a position in calls and when we sell to open a position in puts, no borrowing is necessary. What you need to have is the permission of your broker to make these trades. Normally what your broker does is look at the probabilities associated with various potential losses that you could incur as a result of your selling to open the calls or puts and require you to post margin in an amount that the broker feels comfortable with. If you need a number, approximately $500 or $1,000 per contract. And in that case, assuming you're complying with any other requirements the brokers have, I believe retail brokers have minimum account balance requirements. Some of the other brokers have portfolio risk margin where you're able to do it with relatively low account balances, but you run a greater risk of having your positions closed earlier than you might want them to be closed. But that's a topic for another time. But the language we use when a put or a call are created is writing. We say someone writes a call or someone writes a put. Okay, you're writing a call, you're writing a put. You started out with no position in the call or the put and you sold to open. You sold to open. That's where calls and puts come from. People who have permission of their brokers to create calls and puts do so, and they initially indicate their willingness to write a call or write a put. An indication of willingness to write a call or a put, to sell to open a call or a put, doesn't create a short position. Someone has to agree to trade at that price. Someone has to buy the call or buy the put. And when that occurs, a trade occurs, and then the writer will have a short position in their account. Their account will actually show -1, making up February 2020 call, maybe XYZ call, and the price might be making up a number 85. Right? -1 February 2020 XYZ 85 strike price call. Okay? And that's what it'll look like. And when they write the call, they receive money. So if this was a $200 option, they will then have a liability. They have to close their position. They sold to open, they have to buy to close at some point. They don't owe anybody any shares or any options because no borrowing occurred, but they have an obligation to, at some point, buy to close their position. And if they don't, it's possible that market circumstances would allow them to not to have to do anything. If the option were to expire worthless, that would be ideal for this person that wrote this call. They sold to open it. They received $200 cash when they wrote the call, and then so they sold at $200. They don't know at that point in time what their buy price is. If the option expires worthless, they don't even have to pay a penny for it. They don't have to pay anything. It's like they pay zero for it. And of course, if you sell something for $200 that cost you nothing, every bit of your selling price is profit. So selling the put or writing, in this case, selling the call, writing the call, if it expires worthless, you get to keep the entire $200, and therefore your sales proceeds ends up being your profit. However, if your call option becomes in the money, that means it's going to, at expiration, have a value that's greater than zero. And that can only happen if it has intrinsic value, which means it's in the money. And so if you have written a call and you have chosen to not to buy to close, not to enter an order to buy the same call to close your position. If you don't do that, that means you then have held your short option position through option expiration, and now you are going to be assigned by the Options Clearing Corporation, the OCC. Now let's think about it. The person that bought the call, okay, it's going to auto-exercise. Someone who bought the call that didn't sell it before expiration, their option is going to auto-exercise, and they're exercising the right to buy. Buyers are looking for sellers, okay? So your obligation as a person who wrote a call is such that if you are assigned because someone else exercised it and you got assigned to handle the other side of the trade, you then have to sell the shares of stock to that person that exercised their call at the strike price in the option contract. Now think about it. The reason the person that has exercised their call, whether they exercised it or whether it auto-exercised, was because the call expired in the money. So that means that the price that you are going to have to sell the shares to this person at, the exercise price, the contractual price, is going to be lower than the current market price. Now think about it again. If you don't have those shares, you're going to have to go out and buy the shares at a higher price and then take ownership of the shares and then sell them at the lower strike price. So you're going to have a loss on that part of your trade. So if you write a call, this is important, it's difficult to see, but think through it again. If you write a call option and you let the call expire and the call expires in the money, that means someone is going to exercise a call and you're going to be assigned. Before the call expired and before you were assigned, you had a contingent obligation to sell 100 shares if assigned. Once you've been assigned, the contingency of your obligation has been removed. You're now obligated to sell 100 shares of stock at the strike price, which means, again, if you don't have the shares, you're going to have to go out and get them at the new higher market price and sell them at the strike price. Now, you may still win because let's say you have to buy the stock at $32 a share and then the strike price was $30 a share. So you'll lose $200 there. But maybe when you wrote the call, you received more than $200 payment for it. In other words, at the time you wrote the call, the market price was greater than 200. So you still might make a profit. And that's one point that you have to think through. It's rather challenging. And this is the end of this video. See you in the next one.